Everything happens for a reason. Yeah, the reason was that you
You
didn't
made
do
the
shit.
choices.
Like, you decided not to do anything. You decided not to engage. The universe will decide for you. And it doesn't care. Again, it's indifferent. It doesn't care the direction, and again, it's not the universe deciding. It's the people and the mechanisms around you. Just because you're not deciding to move in a direction, everything else is going to keep moving. It's just now you didn't play a role in the direction that it goes in.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the Mets and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
And I'm Ryan Hoover, and I didn't plan a thing to say right now.
Then we should definitely move on to our second Plan A. At one point, I had the plans keep coming and they don't stop coming. But I took that out. Anyway, maybe it'll come back one day. On September 8th, 1923. You're not ready for this.
No.
No one's ready for this. The rocky shores of Carolina's Honda Point claimed the lives of 7 nearly new U.S. Navy destroyers. Trying to figure out if you know this story or not.
No,
okay.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Making a training exercise to test efficiency, one of the most deadly peacetime disasters in U.S. Navy history. So what does a maritime disaster have to do with your martial arts journey? Well,
wait, we lost 7 ships in a training exercise?
Sure
is that what
did.
you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
So anyway, well, those are the waters we're about to navigate. Are you ready?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. I know this is a little far-fetched, and I'm going to come right out and say it. So I listened to a podcast called Cautionary Tales.
Okay.
And every once in a while, it leads me into an interesting rabbit hole that connects back into this life of whatever we're doing here, whatever this is. And so this one I felt had an interesting connection, especially given what we've talked about in the past in terms of like jiu-jitsu coaches saying they're teaching self-defense when they're not, or even self-defense coaches saying they're teaching self-defense when they're actually LARPing.
Mm-hmm.
So the process that led to this navigational tragedy,
easy for you to say,
tragedy is mostly obsolete, poor visibility, and they were operating under the consideration that it was wartime. So they were trying to test efficiency, and they were supposed to follow guidelines that they would if this were actually like an event.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's a good thing they ran this test, apparently, because
I think so.
If it had been for real, it would have been really bad.
So anyway, it led to the navigators on board using the time-honored as well as imprecise technique of dead reckoning to estimate their position.
Okay.
So dead reckoning uses a previous position and advances a previous known position, and it advances that position based on estimated speeds or maybe known speeds over elapsed time and the course they're planning to take. And so navigators gathered the details of what they knew, the estimated time, and figured out it was about time to turn into this narrow channel that they were racing towards. They were going up the coast of California, and part of it included passing into this narrow channel. And so as a way of checking their work, they reached out to an RDF station just a few miles south of where this incident took place, Honda Point. RDF is radio direction finding. And at that time, obviously, it was relatively new. And let me tell you, I know all about this stuff, but I'm just going to, make it easy for everybody else to digest.
Perfect.
I read a lot about it. I'm still a little confused. But anyway, it was mistrusted. So the ship checked in and they were told they were too far north to turn, but they just discounted it and continued based on what they deduced their position was with this dead reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was 14 ships, I believe, all kind of following. And the whole story kind of progresses each ship and what it was doing and what it was determining. And I think it was the lead ship where the navigators figured out their position, dismissed the RDF positioning, and turned anyway, and ended up crashing into Honda Point and leading many other ships behind them to crash in. Mm-hmm. Some of them realized what was going on or called in and did different things to understand what was happening. And, obviously everybody didn't crash. There were still some that were able to turn and move and that sort of thing. But it was 7 basically new destroyers. Mm-hmm. I think 23 people died in the event as well. So I want to take this parable of sorts, training exercise, and apply it to measuring progress through training. Because while dead reckoning is luckily pretty obsolete in maritime and air nav, and it can be used, and it has some benefits, understanding the full, every single twist and turn that has happened is relatively impossible. But it's a lot of what we rely on in life is dead reckoning to a degree. So I guess before I keep going, do you agree? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
So if it's at all possible, I'm less prepared for this podcast than I am for the other ones. So I did a quick look at your notes like right before we started, and dead reckoning is a term that I wasn't really familiar with. So I had to go at just a quick little like explanation, which is pretty much in line with what you just said without the whole Navy
Maritime
destroyers
disaster.
stuff. But so it was a term I wasn't really familiar with, and so that led me to jot down a few notes just based on that. But I wasn't sure where you were going with it, so I wasn't looking at it exclusively from a training perspective. It kind of, for me, it hit me more like just life in general. Obviously, it's easy to see from a training perspective.
I mean, I want to tie life into it as well.
How it fits. It's the time that we live in now with technology and everything else. It's easy to forget that, life as a whole doesn't come with like GPS specific kind of, start point, end point, all of the landmarks in between. And so I think it's really easy to coast, for lack of a better term, and make a lot of assumptions based on previous acts, previous emotions, previous successes, previous failures, and not have checkpoints, along the way. And I think this probably materializes in a lot of different ways just in regular life, whether it's friendships or relationships or whatever. You assume that just because your relationship, your friendship or whatever was good 6 months ago, it's still good now. And the without having the checkpoints, little tiny deviations from anything over time compound, it's
and that was one of the things with dead reckoning is if there is a little mistake, as you progress forward and forward, it just compounds over time.
Well, you hear, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, it takes a lot of straws before that last one is the kind of
the last raindrop that causes the flood kind of thing.
So I think it's easy in life for this to happen because everybody's busy and everybody's got things going on, and and I think interestingly enough, and probably unfortunately, the people that we are closest to probably are the ones that suffer most from this, because the closer we are, I think the easier it is to make the assumptions that everything's fine, everything's good, when it's somebody that you aren't necessarily all that close to, you probably recognize more readily when things seem a little bit more, the whole familiarity thing and whatever. It's probably easier to recognize from somebody that you don't see or talk to or whatever that frequently when something is off from before. Whereas with people, friendships, relationships, coworkers, whatever, business, because it's the same. I think you can draw similar parallels in business. What was working 6 months ago, and just because you had success with it 6 months ago, if you're not regularly checking in, if you're not regularly looking at your metrics to see if your pricing from 6 months ago is still good today, those kinds of things. 6 months can be a long time, and that can be a really hard course correction, whether it's, again, relationships or business or whatnot. The thing that I think is interesting / unfortunate or whatever is a lot of times by the time you realize it, that course correction is so much that it's either daunting and you're like, well, nothing I can do about it now, or it's so daunting that it becomes uncomfortable and you don't want to address it. It's like it's like when you don't answer a text and you kind of forget about it, and then 3 or 4 days later you're like, oh my god, I should answer that text, and then it's like, well, now it's too late to answer it. It's going to be weird. It's going to be all, sometimes you just got to do it, no matter how uncomfortable or painful or how much time has gone by or whatever. Or you have to, recognize that the consequences of not doing it are probably going to be greater than the consequences of doing it, and own it and keep it moving.
I think as humans too, we're terrible at making those trade-off considerations, especially because we don't really understand compounding. We can't sit here present day and really see what it's going to look like 6 months from now. Like, was my investment today worth it? Which is really funny because I'm a big sci-fi fantasy kind of person, and there's a ton of, if you go into the past and you change like one little thing, like you put your red shirt on instead of your blue shirt on, it leads to like, the end of the end of a war, or you become president or whatever. And you have this strong belief that changing this one little thing will greatly affect the outcome of your future. But when we apply that to present day, like, you don't see that. Well, if I had gotten tea instead of coffee, would I be the next president? And that seems crazy.
Yes.
And it is crazy because I will not be the next president. Nobody give me that job. At least not of the US. But anyway, so there's this compounding idea. And we talked about this, I think it was all the way in episode 6 when we were talking about like a plane off course 1 degree. And planes as they travel are constantly off course, but they continue to check in and use these different tests and signals to know if they're on track and continue to make adjustments. So they end up at their destination. But if they were even just a little bit off course and they kept it off course, you end up hundreds of miles from your destination. And I think that's where you hit this endpoint where you were supposed to be there, especially if you have this timeline in your mind, be it because you just decided something like, oh, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 3 months, or, whatever it is. And you set yourself up on this exact specific path, which obviously plans and how they go. And so you hit that endpoint in time, but you're so far away from where you expected to be. You can let that defeat you.
Yeah. Well, I think an easy analogy, metaphor, or whatever, in our world is shooting. From 3 to 5 feet, you can have huge deviations in muzzle movement and still be on target. So this short, close goal target, you can deviate a good bit and still
reach it.
Yep. When you compound that, and now we're at 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever, the smallest of variations in that muzzle are the difference between hitting the target and completely missing. And so when you talk about like goals, whether it's training or relationships or business or whatever, you can deviate a good bit in the short term and still be okay. But if you plan out something a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, these little deviations compound over time. And if you're not making these checkpoints, if you're not checking your metrics, if you're not looking back on, well, what was I think a good example for us is, we track our lifts, our workouts, and the reason to track them is so you know where you've been, so you can know where you're heading, and you can track whether you're improving or not. Otherwise it's just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks kind of thing. It's very difficult to track progress, improvement, growth without doing that.
Literally tracking.
And so if your goal is a certain PR, over time, you kind of need the goal, the direction. Where is it that I'm trying to get? And then I need to map it out, have a plan in place and make sure that I'm checking back to ensure that I'm not getting off track, that I'm not deviating from what I was trying to do, because those small little things are going to make a big difference on on the end if I'm really trying to bench a certain amount or squat a certain amount or whatever it is.
It's a bit of a catch-22 because you need time.
Mm-hmm.
Like time needs to elapse to see how you're improving and to see a trend. It's going to take more than a couple points to figure out that line. But if you let it go too long without taking that measurement, judging, guiding, whatever, then you end up completely off course. Yeah. And so you have to have those checkpoints, but almost multiples later on that you can kind of average out. Like if we look at training, or we can stick with lifting, it could be training too. But if, one day I'm bench pressing 125 and then the next day I'm 128 and then the next day 128 feels like an elephant and I'm dropped down to 120, there are going to be those ebbs and flows. Yeah. So how do you, as jiu-jitsu is standing out in my mind. Yeah. If Monday night you're rolling and you're like, wow, I don't feel good. I don't know what to do. I suck. And then Tuesday night you're like, okay, well, let me see how I'm doing. Right. And you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm suck. Like,
Well, it's like stocks.
Yeah.
If you're going to get in the stock market for 3 months, don't get in the stock market.
No. Yeah.
Like it's a long-term kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you have very short-term goals and things that you're going to try to do and achieve with this money, don't put it in the stock market, Yeah. And so jiu-jitsu or lifting, very similar. Like if you have goals that you're going to try to achieve in the next couple of months and you need to see massive improvement in that amount of time, and you are easily dissuaded by deviations from that progress, you're going to be really disappointed.
I was going to say, it's going to be tough to reach those goals.
Because any number of things, if we take lifting, I think lifting is easy because they're real metrics, real numbers. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is like, well,
there are so many other factors.
The variables are
doing.
So there are going to be days where 125 is an easy warm up, and days where 125 is like, man, this is the best I got. This is it. I understand that I did a lot more than this last week, but I didn't sleep well. Maybe I didn't eat like I normally eat. Maybe I'm lifting later in the day than I normally lift. There's so many things that can affect it. And so I can't let the one off day affect whatever growth and progress that I've made. If I'm multiple off days in a relatively short period of time, then that's something that I should look at and consider. And maybe I need to make deviations. And
you're right.
Well, yeah, I know that.
I'm going to go back to our maritime disaster.
Okay.
The navigator or commander, I don't know. I'm going to say navigator. Keep us on track a little bit more. But they checked in with this RDF station. Mm-hmm. They'd done it twice.
Yeah.
The first time, got the coordinates and thought that can't be right. It sounds like we're already, we're still too far north, something, whatever. Yeah. And then checked in again and again got a reading that didn't make sense based on his own bias. I mean, this is a cognitive bias just coming about, right?
Yep.
But he had done it twice,
yep.
And I could see where maybe, okay, checking in once and it's new and mistrusted or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, discarding it, but to check in twice and for them both times to give you a bearing, a position that didn't seem right compared to where you were and deciding, well, we're just going to make that. Now I applaud. I don't have that kind of, I don't know, self trust or ego or whatever it was that he was like, sure, in the middle of the fog where I can't see anything and the, the consequences could be death and destruction. Yeah. Let's turn. But so the thing, and I'm going to try to explain this. I don't know if I'll do a good job. You guys can let us know. So RDF, when you were trying to find the direction, it would show you a line. And so like 0 degrees could also be 180 degrees. And that was part of the mistrust. So when his reading would come back as 363 degrees, he thought, well, they're reading it backwards again. It's actually whatever's on the other side of that, right? And so that contributed to part of it. But still, that's making the information fit your own belief.
well, we see this in our industry a ton, where somebody has been doing something the same way for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was successful. Maybe it worked, maybe there is empirical evidence of whatever this is, this training method or this technique or this movement or whatever has a precedent for success. And then someone introduces a new way of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, whether it's ego, whether it's insecurity, whether it's some confirmation bias, whether it's just fear of the unknown, it's often readily rejected by people that have been doing something a certain way for a very long time without really looking into it and understanding why, just dismissing it out of hand because it's unfamiliar, which makes me uncomfortable. And maybe I think in our industry, especially, it's like, well, I have to admit that I've been doing something. I think this is the perception. I have to admit that I've been doing something wrong and I've been teaching something wrong.
Right.
Even though that might not necessarily be the case. You were doing what you thought was best at that time. The wrong thing to do is to ignore new information.
Yeah.
And dismiss it because of a bias, because now when you know better, you should do better kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you're ignorant of something, like there's nothing, ignorance sometimes is a choice, right? You can sometimes ignore information, but a lot of times you're ignorant just because you haven't been exposed to the information. Once you're exposed to the information, now you've got a choice to make.
It's congratulations and I'm sorry.
Yes.
Like I have now ruined you by giving you this information.
Right.
Like now
and so you have a choice, know.
We do this with active killer defense when we go into schools and teach teachers and that sort of thing, and especially with the medical care portion. Now that we've explained the importance of tourniquets, you understand how to use them, you understand the simplicity of them, where to get them, that sort of thing.
Right.
You should have it on you.
Yeah. Spend the $30 and carry it.
Yeah.
And don't ask me about belts and shoestrings and lanyards and bullshit.
Right. Because if you are actually thinking, well, if something happened, and this is usually the case, it's not like we're going into these schools and they're like, well, nothing's going to happen and I'm not even going to think about it. Although they are usually, nothing's going to happen. Yeah. But they've thought about it.
Yeah.
And they have usually thought in the back of their head, oh, well, I always thought we could use our lanyard for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, I've given you the information. I've removed this ignorance.
Right.
And I'm not saying, and this is true again for what you were talking about. It's usually there's some type of combination that can happen. If you run out of tourniquets, I wouldn't say don't try your lanyard, like go for it. But when you know better, do better. Right. And so this is the training methodology you've always used and something new comes along, it doesn't mean chop that old one and just go full in on this other one. That's the all or nothing type of distortion that we've talked about. There's probably space for both.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on the person and the context and the, the level, maybe.
If it's the Vegas shooting, nobody had a couple hundred tourniquets laying around.
Okay. So I'm going to take this a different way, but because of your animal knowledge, I want to talk about this.
Okay.
So when I looked up dead reckoning, so I didn't know this term either. And at first, I heard the story first about this maritime disaster. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, I wonder if dead reckoning was because it caused so much death to use this. That is not the case. I actually couldn't, there are conflicting theories on dead, what that term was. Mm-hmm. Some as like dead in the water, as in like you are using a fixed point. Anyway, it wasn't because it brings about death, but if anyone's quoting me, that's why it's called that. Anyway, in like the Wikipedia articles about dead reckoning and how it's mostly obsolete for maritime, it talks about how heavily it's used in the animal world, where it's more frequently referred to as path integration.
Okay.
And since I just asked you this morning, do you think our deer are coming back? Because we feed deer in the winter and they always seem to find us, and I'm sure they get back to their own little homes. Mm-hmm. And you said probably, if they survived.
Yeah.
But probably, I thought it was funny that was just what came up in my mind today, because animals do a very similar thing in terms of estimating distance and time traveled, and they have a lot more innate resources to do that.
Yeah. Yes. It's built in, right? I mean, which we probably had that at some point. It's interesting that our intelligence level made a lot of our innate things kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
We out-teched ourselves.
We did.
To a degree.
We out-teched ourselves.
And so a lot of those things that were built in at some point, these survival mechanisms, how to get from point A to point B that we've been to before. Even now, like I feel like I used to have a pretty good sense of direction, but now you throw it into a GPS, and you don't even think about the turns you're making and how long it was since the last turn, that kind of thing. You're just following along. And then if you have to find it again on your own, it's like,
yes.
So yeah, but yeah. And I mean, you see this with, especially like migratory birds and things like that, they're
right. Yeah.
they're going to travel really long distances, in a group, in a flock. And they're doing it a couple times a year.
Yeah.
With pretty good, accuracy. I mean, but it's innate. I mean, they're not thinking through it.
Well, and that's one of the things that separates humans out from a lot of the animal world is flexible thinking.
Yeah.
Like
for better or worse,
the way we make choices, the way we think about things.
Right.
Yeah. They're doing it.
Yeah.
And they use some external factors. They use sun, they use, like polar magnetic, fields of the earth and that sort of thing. But they also have the idiothetic, internal sensations.
Yep.
Like I'm talking literally like bones in the inner ear kind of stuff to understand their movements and their muscle movements and how far they've gone and traveled and that sort of thing. And even
they can recognize when a storm is coming. Things like this that, again, we probably had at some point, but now we look on our phone to see what the radar is doing. And so we've kind of out-teched a lot of what at some point was probably built in for us.
So when it comes to, if we look at measurement of our martial arts path, journey, our training, our progress, that sort of thing, I guess what would be some, maybe I'll call them innate, but just internal things that we could maybe check into that would be helpful, and still give us a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, we have to come at it from the overall overarching mindset of direction is more important than perfection, because it's really easy to get caught up in, this is my ideal, this is what I'm shooting for. And any kind of deviation or digression from that can derail me if that's not my mindset, if that's not my thinking,
The mental strength that was the first 20 something episodes of this podcast,
right.
Really.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, I have a goal, which means that I have a direction, and I have to understand, recognize, acknowledge that it's not going to be a straight line.
Yeah.
There are going to be deviations throughout. But if I keep the direction in mind, if I keep my goal in mind, and I'm not ignoring the deviations, I'm checking in. I recognize, okay, this is a deviation. Is this a deviation because just variables happened, or is this a deviation because of something that I'm doing that is taking me off of the path that is moving me in a different direction? And again, those things can be little small things over time, but if I'm not recognizing them and then either course correcting or reevaluating, because we talked about this before, maybe it's time to reevaluate goals too. Maybe what I thought I was wanting and whatever. But the thing about martial arts, I think a lot of times is the metrics are not like weightlifting. And so a lot of times the metrics, the progressions are the result of someone else telling us how we're doing.
Right.
Or
my physical body against an opponent's physical body to decide how I'm doing, which we talked about so many variables.
Right.
This is actually, so I did a rock climbing competition a couple of years ago just to kind of see, I was curious a lot about the experience, how it went, because I didn't understand how to track progress and decide how that went. So I just wanted to do it and see. And it's the most calm I've ever been before a test or competition or tournament or anything, because I was like, man, it's me against this wall.
Yeah.
This wall is very static. It is unmoving. The roots are what they are.
Right.
And I'm going to do how I do, versus going into like a jiu-jitsu competition. And it's like, the variables are so difficult to comprehend, and you're trying to figure it out all at once. And so, and there's injury that can happen in both places, but for rock climbing, the injuries are going to be on me. It's because I made a bad move or whatever. Like, it can happen, but it's still mostly me.
Right.
When I talk about pitting my body against another person,
right.
I can't control what they do.
Right.
And so there are things they can do that cause me harm.
Yep.
And so, anyway, watching people get so worried and concerned and be stressed out over that rock climbing competition. And I was like, I get it. The stakes are higher for you. This is your thing. And your goal is maybe to be like a professional rock climber and go to the Olympics or whatever. So, there is that level to it. But for me, because a whole half of the equation that I had never had before just became a literal wall, I was like, this is so easy. This is so much more comforting.
Yeah. So for me, the way that I look at it is, yes, I agree. However, if you look at a jiu-jitsu competition or really anything where I'm pitted against another human, I can still only control my side of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, I spend a lot more time worrying about things I can't control than you do.
Yes. But that's the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I understand. This is a wall. It's static. I can see the route. I know exactly point A to point B. I have a general idea of how I'm going to get there. Now it's just whether I can execute or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I stand across the mats from somebody, I'm looking at this person and I'm like, damn, they look fit. Damn, they look strong. Damn, they look athletic. Blah, 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 whatever. But end of the day, I still don't have any control over that things.
Yeah.
What I have control over is my last week of training, my last month of training, my last 6 months of training, the mindset, the mentality that I'm bringing into this, recognizing that I still only control me. That person is still just the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can't affect.
You're right. Yeah. 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 You're right.
Anything that I can do to affect their performance is just based on my performance.
Yeah.
And look, this is way easier said than done.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't mean it to sound like that. However, when we used to be a lot more kind of competition oriented, we had a term for people that performed really well in the centers. And then when it came to competition, maybe less, and you called them gym fighters.
Oh, okay.
So in the gym, world beaters, really good, like crush everybody. They were the people that you were like, yeah, man, this guy or this girl, she's going to kill it. And then you would go to a comp or you would go to a fight or whatever. And during warm-ups, all of a sudden they're like a different person.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And they were the same person.
Yeah.
But they let the variables of the circumstance affect their performance, affect who they were. They didn't all of a sudden lose their skills. They didn't all of a sudden lose their athleticism. They didn't all of a sudden lose their strength. It was their perception of the stakes of the event that changed the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
saw people lose fights that 100% they were better than the person that they were fighting. I know this. I knew it before we got there, but they were beaten before they got in the ring or the cage or on the mats or whatever. And I think you see this repeated in a lot of instances. You see people that are bright, intelligent, whatever, but then when the stress of an event or a circumstance or whatever is put on them, they don't perform particularly well. And again, it's the variable is you. That's the one you control. You don't really control anything else. And so if I'm putting in the time, if I'm putting in the effort, I've picked my direction. I'm working through my my speed and my progress getting to this goal, that's all I really can do. End of the day, I get there and they're better than me. Okay, well, that's a new metric.
Yeah.
That's a new thing that I can. All right, their wrestling was better than mine.
I was about to say, how were they better than
or whatever?
me so that I can,
they had a better guard game than me. I couldn't pass their whatever it is. I couldn't get past their jab. But whatever it is, I have a new metric. I have a new thing that I can work on. But I didn't beat myself. I went in at my best, physically, mentally, emotionally. Because you can be physically a rock star, but if emotionally you're a mess, the odds are you're not going to come out on top. And I think that's true of most things. We're relating it to martial arts competition, whatever. But you're going to plug that into work, career, relationships, whatnot. It's how you look on the outside versus what's happening on the inside. The whole fake it till you make it thing. I think for a very short term, maybe there's something to that. But man, that veneer will go away real fast. People that are not faking it will see through that really quickly.
I was in college when I binged through, I don't know how many seasons of Scrubs. And, it's about these medical interns, doctors, and they're learning to do the job and trust themselves and applying things from the classroom onto real humans.
Right.
And I mostly identified to a more scared, kind of timid character. And then one of them was just more, the exact phrase he said was learn by doing, and just went in there and did it. And so that surprisingly stuck with me for a long time until I got into, my real world and a job. And I would sit there like, do I do this? Do I not? Whatever. And finally I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to do it. And this is how I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn by doing it. Go. And so I don't know why you're giving me that look, but that replaced the fake it till you make it idea for me. All right. Tell me why you're smiling. Because I used Scrubs to guide my life. Okay. No. Just checking.
Because I still see you.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of
struggle with I am very much the type that it's like, all right, there's two choices. Let's pick one. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you are very much the type of there's two choices, and then maybe there's some subset of choices underneath it.
Let me picture this one going as far out as I can, and I'll picture this one going as far out as listen, I'm not saying I'm great at just doing it, but the time between the decision-making time has surprisingly, I know you don't believe me, it has shortened.
and look, I mean,
we are very different.
Either of these things to extremes is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't think about things and you just go, that's a problem.
Right. But you can definitely get paralysis by overanalysis. Yeah. And then nothing gets done. Yeah. Which is a choice. Right. It's like, well, if I don't decide, you decide. By not picking a thing, you've decided that you're okay with whatever happens.
Yeah.
And then again, that's you acquiescing the variable that you control just to the universe.
Yeah.
Which we've already established is indifferent. The universe is just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And so if you decide not to engage, then you don't have a say at all in what happens. And then,
Yeah. And then I guess you can blame it on the ethereal but that's just not true. You're just lying to yourself.
Yeah. Whatever it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was just that's what was just supposed to happen.
Everything happens for a reason. Yeah, the reason was that you didn't do shit. You decided not to do anything. You decided not to engage. True. The universe will decide for you, and it doesn't care. Again, it's indifferent. It doesn't care the direction. And again, it's not the universe deciding. It's the people and the mechanisms around you. Just because you're not deciding to move in a direction, everything else is going to keep moving. It's just now you didn't play a role in the direction that it goes in.
Ship in the ocean, it's drift. It's the current, it's the waves pushing, pulling, that you can't necessarily account for.
Yes.
Possibly an earthquake happening underneath that you don't even know about, that's shifting everything kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we dug into this a little bit, which I'm glad, because I was thinking of using this idea to kind of help clarify Dead Reckoning, understanding how to use when to use estimations, because again, we have something that we can't really track and give actual account towards. But if, let's say I'm practicing jujitsu, I'm a student, maybe I'm a coach, and I understand my skill set and what my jujitsu looks like, and my goal is to be a self-defense coach. We'll call it jujitsu for self-defense, but truly understand like what our grounded program is. Right. Truly go from just, okay, I have this jujitsu knowledge, to understanding where it applies in self-defense contexts and situations. And so if I know where I am and my goal is to get there, and I'm doing these trainings, maybe going to courses, and let's say somewhere along the way I decide, okay, I'm going to do tournaments to decide if my jujitsu is good for self-defense. Right. And so we've added this metric that we think is going to give us a measurement that could possibly be way off.
Right.
And throw us into the rocks,
right,
so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I guess understanding not so much what I'm doing, but how I should think about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Because you can use competitions.
Sure.
But if you want to be good at competing, if you want to win competitions, you necessarily are going to do things that aren't good for self-defense, because you're going to have to play to a point system in some cases, or you're going to take a bad position because it might lead to a submission.
Right.
Whereas if it led to a knife fight, you'd be in trouble.
Right. Yeah. And we're using competition in a very broad sense. I mean, like IBJJF is going to be very different than like combat jiu-jitsu, and so if my goal is, all right, I want to have a better understanding of jiu-jitsu for self-defense. I personally don't think just jumping into any random competition is going to be helpful. Like I think if you need the stress of the competition, that's fine, but that's a personal like thing that you need for you. I don't think it really helps your self-defense sensibilities for teaching a group.
You mean saying that I've, won a new breed championship 3 times doesn't help with my self-defense qualifications?
I mean, I don't think so. There are probably people that are going to disagree with me, but I don't see what relevance there is to it at all.
That shows me you've done competitions and you've done well in a competition environment.
Right.
Cool.
Right. But it has nothing to do with whether you understand how to get the 35-year-old accountant to be able to not get bounced off of a car and then knocked on the ground and mounted and their face caved in while their 10-year-old watches. I think there's almost no relevance there, because you're going to do things in competitions, like you said. I mean, we might touch hands and sit.
Yeah.
And, I know I make fun of this all the time, but like it only makes sense to play based on the rules that have been established, that you're going to be rewarded for certain things. Well, in a self-defense context, you would never do this.
So one of my problems with competing is I want to stand and try to take the fight to the ground. And so it's not me sitting. It's when we touch hands, 2 seconds later, they're sitting. And I'm like, man, this is not like, this is like, I should just stop the match now. This is not what I wanted. I wanted to fight to it,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also understand the argument that if you're going to engage in a competition with these rule sets, then you have to learn to play that game.
But I don't think the other person's game.
But I don't think there's any relevance to self-defense.
No, I agree.
I again, and we've had this conversation. I think everybody should have grappling, jiu-jitsu, wrestling sensibilities to truly understand self-defense. But you've got to weed through, just like you would for boxing or kickboxing, Muay Thai, whatever, what makes sense for self-defense and what doesn't. I mean, if you take Muay Thai, for example, the Tai Plum clinch position, double collar tie position, is not great for self-defense. I'm not saying it doesn't have a place as a transitional kind of control, but it's not great. Both of my hands are tied up on their head. I have no idea where their hands are. They have easy access to their waistband, my waistband, those kinds of things, where I love clinch work, but it's not something that we spend a lot of time on for self-defense, because I think it has some massive holes.
Yeah. Kind of going down like a resume of what might actually tell you that somebody understands self-defense or not. We see people use competition to bolster their self-defense status.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also see like law enforcement experience, which, and I'm not saying that these things are necessarily exclusive, that because you've done law enforcement, it doesn't mean that you can't teach self-defense. But mostly, having done law enforcement does not mean
it's
you
irrelevant.
should go teach
I
civilian self-defense.
think generally speaking, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
You could have a better understanding of just violence in general. But I think it's mostly irrelevant. It's a completely different context. It's a completely different set of expectations. It's a completely different rule set. You know, you have a Batman style toolkit around your waist. You know, you have this utility belt that's full of tools. You have a mic where you can call for backup. You have a vest. There's a lot of things that go into this and you are, as part of the job, inserting yourself into a potentially violent situation that as a civilian, you should walk away from.
Well, I was about to say, at the very base of what they do, if I'm sitting here and this call comes in, hey, there's violence at, down the road over there, officers need to go that way. I'm going the other way.
Right.
That's self-defense.
Right.
You know?
And so like, I see very little relevance. And besides the fact that, and you're starting to see some changes in this, but realistically, most defensive tactics programs suck, which means that most police officers, unless they're going and getting training on their own, they're not physically prepared for dealing with these kinds of things without these tools, without these weapons, without the backup. If you're going through, and we've talked about this in North Carolina, at least you've got 6 months of BLET. It's like 40 hours of DT. 8 hours of that is lecture, and the other 32 hours is pressure points and standing joint locks and crap that doesn't work under stress. Being taught by somebody that probably hasn't done anything for a very long time, if at all. Like I know at one point they were teaching from a video, so and again, like there are changes happening in the space, but just as a general rule, I have heard plenty of police officers say things or former police officers that may have been relevant on the job that do not translate well to the average citizen in a self-defense context, even to the degree of, well, you don't have to worry about use of force. Well, that's bullshit.
Heard that before.
You absolutely do have to worry about use of force. And so when you're talking about, well, what are some metrics when it comes to how to determine if this is a good self-defense program or whatever? Well, if they're not talking about pre-contact, if they're not talking about use of force, if they're not talking about preemption, if they're not talking about after action, if it's all just physical tools, stimulus response, choke, defense, then I think they don't have a good understanding of violence, or they have decided that it's not good for business and they're just not going to do it. And so either one, it doesn't really matter. It's not built to serve the ultimate goal of making people more capable of dealing with confrontation or potential confrontation, and then what to do after the fact. So if there's not a big conversation regularly about use of force, regularly about de-escalation, regularly about body language, hitting first if necessary, what to do after you have engaged in a violent confrontation, how to make that 911 call, what to say, what not to say, these kinds of things, I think it's not a full, complete self-defense program.
Well, that was a great list, because anyone who is sitting on top of whatever skills they've developed currently, and they do want to move more towards being able to integrate and explain what's self-defense, what's not, that sort of thing, it starts by using these questions in that list of what's preemption, what do we consider with use of force, to start guiding your training.
Right.
And the benefit of somebody listening who's been training is you should have a gain that you can see. We've talked about the gap and the gain,
right,
where you hopefully remember your first day on the mats, just not able to do anything, having no understanding of really what to do, getting knocked down, pushed around, choked out, tapped every time you make a movement, into starting to learn how to survive.
Yeah.
And so you can see the progress you've made, and now you start using those tools to guide your training. I think one of the important things is to understand what improvement in a physical skill looks like, because it's not always I can't do it right now and then I can do it.
Right.
There's a progression of, oh, I realized I should have done something different there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, I remembered what to do, but it was too late.
Yeah.
And then, oh, I remembered what to do and started doing it and it still didn't work. Oh, I started doing it early. There's a whole spectrum within there, and we tend to try to black and white, can I do it or not? But that's really not how learning is.
Well, I mean, from a coach's perspective, I see and hear this all the time, where somebody will do a thing, they'll see me watching them do a thing, and then they'll say, I forgot this.
Yep, that's great.
The fact that they recognized it is progress. Not necessarily that they didn't do it is all of a sudden, well, you're not getting it. You didn't, maybe they didn't do it or they did do it, but they recognized that there was a deficiency somewhere. And that's what we talk about when we talk about like the difference between having ownership of a move or movement versus just memorizing a move or movement. When you get to the point where you can identify the problems or the deficiencies or whatever, that's progress. That's you working towards having ownership of the move or movement versus, I'm just doing it this way because this is the way it was told to me, and so I can mimic this move or movement.
Or even worse, this is the way I'm doing it because this is just what my body's doing. That training on autopilot. And I see that a ton in classes where I know very explicitly I said to do it this way, and you're not, but like I saw you watching me, I know you heard me, and I say it again, and I watch you and I see you watching, but you're just letting your body go. And now look, the reasons people are there the day they had, maybe they just want to zone out and just do the thing. And, they are kind of making a choice not to get better that day. That's, a choice. And with adults, at least, you're paying me to teach you and provide a skill. And if you're, zoning out, doing your own thing, it's kind of on you on this one. But it takes that cognitive processing that, again, a lot of times people forget. Like, you are learning a physical skill. If you just let your body do what it's always done, just go do that. I see this with arm drags a lot.
Yeah.
People kind of get into like a groove, and it's like, okay, we slow it down, try to do it this way, and let's own that. But especially once you feel like you've got it, I think changing it is difficult. I see that in jiu-jitsu too.
Yeah.
You've done your trap and roll escape 8 million times the same way. And so somebody comes up and is like, hey, try it this way. Just what we talked about at the beginning with training methodologies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's true of anything. Like, it's hard to change from something that especially if you've found success in it previously, even in this moment in time. I mean, this goes back to the concept of dead reckoning, where if you've navigated in a certain way,
and it's worked
out for years and it's worked out fine, it's really hard to deviate from that with new information, especially if that new information is unfamiliar or uncertain or whatever to you, or it's coming from a source that's new. It's hard to let go of, this is the way I've always done it. Even if in that moment in time you're being presented with information that is saying, look, it's not working. The reason that you are failing right now is because the way you've always done it is being shut down by what this person is doing to you.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I get that it's hard to receive new information. It's as humans, I think we go to one extreme or the other. It's either hard for us to receive new information from somebody that's very familiar to us.
Yep.
Or somebody that's brand new to us.
Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes somebody brand new to come in and present new information for certain people. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you're, as the other coach, you're looking at like, I said that last week. You see this a lot with parenting. You can say the same thing to your kids a million times and it's like, whatever, dude. But then they get this information from someone else and all of a sudden it resonates. Yep. Well, as a parent or as a coach, this may be frustrating. However, the end result is what you were looking for in the first place.
Right.
So
they got that information.
So once you get over yourself and you get out of your feelings, it's like, all right, well, yes, I've said this a million times, and yes, they should have listened to me the first time, but at least now they've got it.
Yeah.
Because if my goal is for them to be able to escape mount, I shouldn't care where the information came from.
Right.
I shouldn't care that even if I was saying the same things, but somebody else came in and said it just a little bit differently, that resonated with them. Right. Honestly, as a coach, I should take that as that
should be a note,
a learning opportunity for me. That is a really good way to say that. I'll add that to the way that I'm presenting it, But ego gets in the way a lot of times.
Yeah.
And we all have it to a degree,
And again, we all have this cognitive bias.
Sure.
It's to what degree it's functioning, but that's part of living and how we behave as humans.
Well, on some level, if you're going to get anything done, you need to have some measure of this is the way that I do it, and this is because otherwise you're going to just be constantly bogged down with, well, should I do it this way or should I do it that way, or what about this other thing, or I heard on this podcast that I could do it this way. You'll never get anything done.
Yeah.
So on some level, you've got to have, well, one, to do what we do, there's got to be some level of ego. If you're going to get in front of a group of people, and especially if they're bigger, stronger than you, whatever, and you're going to tell them, this is what I believe is the best way to incapacitate another human being.
Yeah.
You have to have some level of ego to do that.
Of course.
You're going to travel and go halfway around the world and teach people that speak a different language how to do this. You have to have some level of ego, and you have to have some level of cognitive and confirmation bias, because if you don't, you'll get up in front of this group of people and they'll be like, he doesn't believe in himself. Why should I believe in what he's saying?
Yeah.
So some of that's necessary.
I do think this is a good case for attending like seminars early on. You don't have to wait until you're 4 or 5 years into your training to start going to other seminars. Right. You should go immediately. And it's not always going to be about, you go to a 2-hour seminar. It's not about taking in every little bit of information in that 2 hours.
Yeah.
You're maybe looking for one thing to walk away with, or maybe you're 3-4 months into training and you're going to all these seminars, and you get a feel for the environment and community that you like and appreciate, and you take that with you. It's not always what they're teaching is what you're getting.
Right. But also, if you've only been training for a month and you go to somebody's seminar, don't come back to me. Don't come back to me and tell me, well, this is the way so-and-so said to do it.
Because we were doing reverse de la Hydra into it.
Right.
And you're like, because let's pass guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the people that are going to look at YouTube videos after,
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe the way they were teaching a certain thing was great, but the context they were giving it in was different than the context that we're working in, you know? It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a student come up to me and say, so-and-so said this, talking about a coach. Yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way they said that.
Right.
The way you are telling me they said this, I know for a fact they did not say what you are saying they said. You've colored it in a way that you misinterpreted it, whatever. But I know for sure they did not say that.
There's context, energy, or like a response that they have missed. And that's the biggest thing.
And a lot of times in a coaching kind of environment, we're giving little sound bites. And it's real easy to tack on your own bias to these little tiny sound bites. Like somebody gives you a phrase and you add an extra 3 or 4 words to it, and all of a sudden it has a completely different meaning than what they meant it to have. And now you're relaying this to somebody else, and that somebody else is like, either their response is, holy shit, I can't believe they said that. I'm going to go deal with this, or no freaking way they said that.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're all just bias machines walking around with our own situations that are coloring our vision of what's happening.
Which is why dead reckoning is a real problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Or can be a real problem.
Yeah.
Again, I think on some level you got to have it.
Yes.
You have to have the ability to use prior information, prior acts, prior responses to help shape your next move and your overall direction that you're going in, but with also the ability to attain, ascertain, evaluate new information, and be willing to look for new information.
Right.
Because otherwise you're adrift, and you didn't recognize that the wind changed, and now all of a sudden you're 18 miles off course. And it's so hard to see that goal now that you're like, fuck it, I'm not, it's not worth it to me.
Right. And you could choose to not have a goal, and then wherever you land, you're fine.
Right. But then don't blame anybody else.
The universe.
When you end up, somewhere that you definitely don't want to be, because you still put yourself there.
Yeah.
By doing nothing, you did everything. You decided, I am okay with whatever happens. So once you're there, own it. Be okay with whatever happened.
I think we did the things. Actually, I think we have a lot that we could still go down this path on. But it is interesting where Dead Reckoning is a part of your estimate for what's brought you to this place, what's going to get you to the next place, tempered with other coaches, with class performance, maybe competitions, but still being able to give some honest feedback and have self-reflection on what you're doing and what your goals are.
I think if we're gonna button it up, I think direction over perfection. Don't get bogged down in everything having to be exactly right. But then, as an extension of that, corrections are vital. I can't just whole cloth ignore anything that doesn't go exactly the way I planned on it. I have to find this kind of middle ground where I recognize, okay, this is a deviation. I can either fix it, or I recognize I'm still going to get where I'm going even with this deviation. Or I recognize, okay, this is a deviation that's going to cause a real problem down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go ahead and take care of it now. And sometimes it's a big course correction, and sometimes it's a little small thing. I think generally when we see deviations from direction, from goals, from relationship status, from work, from training, whatever, it's little things over time that we ignored or didn't recognize, and now they're a problem. Yeah. Whereas if we had addressed them at the moment they happened, they would have been a blip. They would have been nothing.
Right.
It's
people say, oh, it came out of nowhere kind of stuff. And
no,
like,
it
didn't.
It's
you missed the signs.
And this will be, I don't think this is a stretch. And in the College Bound book, I have a section on roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that until I started writing this book, I never really gave much thought to. But it's the idea of, look, if you have conversations with your roommate very early on about expectations, because this is somebody that, first of all, you've probably never lived with anybody outside of your immediate family before.
Yep.
Now you're stuck with a complete stranger that you know nothing about.
And 200 square feet.
Yeah. And the thing that I thought about when I was writing this was Wednesday.
Yeah.
When she is given a roommate, what's the other girl's name? Enid. These two could not be more different. Right. And so when you're put in this situation, and you're going to be in this situation, it's not like that's not an unknown. Yeah. The unknown is
who are they going to
be? So if you have these conversations early, like what's okay, what's not okay, then it's not an awkward, uncomfortable, difficult thing down the road where these little things start to happen and you don't say anything, and then a little more, and as the other side, you're looking at it like, well, I did this, they didn't say anything, they must be okay with it. Right. And so you keep pushing.
Your boyfriend spends the night one night, and then all of a sudden
it's like, okay,
3 people in a dorm room.
Right. And that's happening 3-4 nights a week now. And so now it's a real awkward conversation. It's real uncomfortable. You still have to live with this person.
Yeah.
And so if you had just addressed it on the front end beforehand, that's you controlling variables that you can control, you know?
Well, and it's so difficult, especially in that situation where you're going to change so much in those first couple of months.
Yeah.
Like you might be a different person by the end of that semester.
Sure.
But if you haven't established this communication over how we handle things, it gets harder to handle things.
Yes. And that's
It's having a template. It's having the skeleton and filling in the muscle.
Yes.
Here's how we're going to deal with conflict, problems, concerns, whatever changes.
Right.
So that when something comes up, you go to your template and you deal with it.
And you don't have to be rigid about it.
Yeah.
Like, but if there's no framework at all, then it's just, well, whatever happens is okay because I didn't say it wasn't to begin with, you know? And so somebody comes back to you and they're like, well, you didn't say, yeah, they're right. You didn't say that.
This is literally lost in the fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why you need that. You need tools at your disposal to deal with it, whether it's dead reckoning, soundings, you know, idiothetic, all that stuff. It comes right.
And as an 18-year-old, you're not thinking about this stuff.
No.
You know, like you're not going into this thinking. You have
no idea what to think.
You have no frame of reference.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. The first time my roommate had people over and were drinking, I never thought like, oh,
this is a conversation I should have had 3 months ago. Yeah.
I do want to talk more about this, especially getting lost in the fog, especially drifts and derivations, and you know the big elephant in the room of goals changing. You think you want one thing and you want to be one place, and you realize that as you had to get there, you just keep getting pulled to the side, and you snap back and pull to the side and snap back, and at some point realizing, oh, maybe my goal isn't what I thought it was. Especially in the martial arts world, you know, the reasons people start aren't the reasons they stay. You know, like things can change full turn.
I think that's true of people that start martial arts centers as well.
Yeah.
You know, they start them because it's something that they're passionate about, and then they find out, oh, this is a business. I don't really like that part of it. You know, and so that leads to a whole other thing. You know, is this something that I want to continue in this way? Because to make this a successful business, I'm going to have to give a little on the things that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
You know, ask me how I know.
I will in 2 weeks. That's our look at Dead Reckoning. If you enjoyed this discussion, please leave us 5 stars, follow, share, subscribe, comment on the episodes, especially on Spotify, commenting on the episodes, you know, sharing and following. All of that stuff helps us so much. Just getting the word out there, but also letting the beings at Spotify and YouTube know that it was a beneficial podcast. So it helps so much. Please, please, please rate, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, ignore everything I just said. It does not help us if you comment and share. So make sure you comment and share and tell everybody how awful it is. Thanks for listening to Second Plan A, and we look forward to growing with you next time.
Thanks, everybody.